answer. So you don't give an answer and then it will be condemned as being incorrect. In the social sciences, your ability to convince people is what makes your answer looks right or not right. Your ability to convince. So you may give a point. Maybe on first sight, somebody may look at that point to be something that is not concrete enough. But when you give further explanation to it, people get to be convinced and they tend to accept your answer. So in this class, whatever you say is not wrong. It depends on how you explain it. So you can put across a point and you're able to convince all of us that this is actually what you want to talk about, and that is it. So it's about explanations. Can we get a third opinion or a third perspective as far as the meaning of gender is concerned? When you hear the word gender, what comes to your mind?
So I think Edward's hand is up, sir.
Who?
Edward, sir.
Edward, okay.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, please. I would say is a cultural and social construction of what an individual in society is assigned to do to earn a living. That is what
Hello, Edward.
Hello, sir.
Edward.
Hello, sir.
Your line is breaking. I can hardly hear you.
Okay, I was saying
is it possible to repeat what you said?
There's a cultural construction of a society about how activities or jobs in society are being assigned to individuals.
Okay, so Edward is saying that gender is about the social or cultural construction of roles and responsibilities in society. Did I get you right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think you all seem to be making a valid point, right? You all seem to be speaking directly to the concept and to the meaning of gender. So actually the concept of gender, like I said, is something that we come across all the time. We come across it even as students in institutions. In our institutions, we have centers we call gender center or whatever. And this kind of center is found in some institutions. So for example, in the University of Cape Coast, there is a center where they deal largely with issues about gender. They call it SEGRAD. If you go to other institutions, they have units or sections or centers that take up the issues of gender. So that should tell you how important this concept is, right? How relevant it is, and why we need. So when we talk about gender, it has to do more with the social or cultural construction, like someone said, about the roles and responsibilities of people in society. When we talk about gender, we are actually shifting away from the biological characteristics. We are shifting away from the biological characteristics or the biological dimension of the human being. So for example, when we talk about gender, our focus is not on the biological characteristics. So for example, someone having a penis or someone having a vagina, that is not really what gender is about. So gender is about social construction or cultural construction of society. So, for example, if we have a man and a woman in society, what does society charge men and women to do? What responsibilities does society assign to men and women? What are our expectations of both sexes in terms of behavior? How should men behave? How should women behave? What kind of jobs can be done by a man? What kind of jobs can be done by a woman in society? So when we try as a society to assign roles and responsibilities to men and women in society, then we are more into the realm of gender rather than into the realm of sex. So whereas sex has to do with the biological determination of these two sexes, gender largely has to do with the social construction or the cultural construction of the existence of these two types of people in society, that is man and woman. So in everyday society, in everyday life, men have some privileges in society and they also have some opportunities. In the same way, women have some privileges and opportunities in society. And these privileges and opportunities in society are assigned to these people, that is to men and women, based on their biological features. So for example, if you are somebody who is a male with male biologically defined characteristics, then society expects you to behave in a particular way. In the same way, if you are a woman with feminine biological characteristics, then society has assigned some roles and responsibilities to you. There are some privileges for you in society, and those privileges are assigned to you because that particular biological characteristics. So to that extent, some find gender as a social distinguish people in terms of what they have been assigned to in society. So in that case, we are trying to distinguish the characteristics, social or cultural characteristics or attributes of men and women or boys and girls in society, largely according to the roles and responsibilities that we assign to them. So in that sense, the UNICEF defines gender as a social and cultural construct which distinguishes differences in the attributes of men and women or boys and girls, that is according to their assigned roles and responsibilities in society. According to their assigned roles and responsibilities in society. But unfortunately, in our everyday life, we come to see gender as being synonymous with women, right? So whenever the concept, the word gender is mentioned, people begin to associate it more with women. That is what gender has come to mean in our everyday society. But that is actually not the academic meaning of gender. But we're just telling you that in our everyday life, as soon as you mention the word gender, then people begin to associate it with women. But gender as a concept is about both men and women. So technically, when we talk about gender, we are actually referring to both men and women. And when we talk about gender, we are talking about how society constructs different things in relation to these two categories of people, men and women, or boys and girls. So the kind of relationship that should exist between men and women in society is largely defined by this concept called gender. So gender is largely social, whereas sex is largely biological. Gender is largely social. So it is a socially acquired identity, and it varies from society to society. When we say it varies from society to society, across the world, every society defines roles and responsibilities for men and women, right? But the way society defines these roles also varies from society to society. So, for example, in American society, the particular role or responsibility they may assign to a man, when you come to our African context, maybe somebody may be very surprised to see a similar role being assigned to a man. So when we talk about assigning roles and responsibilities in terms of gender, there are also differences according to the type of society in which this assignment is done. Hello, are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So all along, what we have been trying to say is that gender is something, it's a phenomenon that you encounter everywhere. But how it is constructed could differ from society to society. So the way the American society will assign its responsibilities and rules to men and women may not exactly be the same rules or responsibilities that are assigned to men and women in a different context, such as in Ghana or in other African countries. So even though we are saying that gender is largely a social phenomenon, but even its sociality varies from society to society. So you don't have a situation where, like, in all kinds of societies or in all societies around the world, men are assigned the same responsibility. You can find variations depending on which society you find yourself. So, for example, in some societies, people may find it strange to see a man bathing a baby because they think it's assigned for a particular gender. But in other societies too, it is not surprising to see men bathing their babies or young children, because in that society, the way they assign roles and responsibilities, man or woman can actually do a particular job. For example, bathing a child is not specifically reserved for a man or for a woman. So in some societies, it is not surprising. Other societies may find it very surprising why a woman is there and a man is birthing children. So that's why the whole world is a complex space. What takes place in one society in respect to a particular gender is not expected to run true in all societies. So we vary significant, societies vary significantly, and therefore the assignment of roles and responsibilities also vary across societies. So we are saying that since gender is a socially constructed term, it can change from time to time based on what society seeks to achieve with regard to the relationship between men and women. So we are saying that gender assignment of roles and responsibilities based on gender can even change from time to time. So for example, in Ghanaian society, for over 100 or 50 years ago, maybe only males used to do this particular job. But now, after 100 or 50 years, you can find women also doing such kind of job. That's why we're saying that even gender assignment of roles and responsibilities based on gender can vary over time. It could change from time to time. So, for example, in many Ghanaian societies or in many Ghanaian communities, some years back, maybe several years back, anytime they mentioned a nurse, people actually attributed the nursing profession to females. So, as time went on, things kept changing, and males also started becoming nurses. But initially, the understanding was that anytime they mention a nurse, you should necessarily expect a woman. So at some point, people were surprised to find that even males were labeled as nurses because of the particular construction of that role, that nursing role in our society. Even though in other communities or in other societies across the world, the situation may not have been like that from the beginning. But in our Ghanaian society, the mention of the word nurse was immediately attributed to a female. So, but as time went on, people began to realize that even males were nurses. And even driving. Some time ago, unheard of to see a woman driving. So driving in our own context was specifically reserved for a particular gender, right? But as time went on, it became so common to see even women driving, and for us to shift our thinking from the fact that only men could serve as drivers. So we are saying that as time goes on, the concept gender or gender roles keep changing. What used to be reserved for only men can now be done by even females or women. And what used to be purposely reserved for women is now seen to be done by even men. Right. So this is the sense in which we talked about variation of gender roles and responsibilities in different societies, and even the changing dynamics of gender roles in society. So gender, like we said, is different from sex. Whereas sex refers to the biological condition, that is being male or female, gender is largely about social or cultural construction. So sex is a biological construct and gender is a cultural or social construct. Gender is socially or culturally constructed. Sex on the other hand, is biologically determined. So let us look at the process of gender development. So far, we have been able to examine the concept of gender, and we have learned that gender is so dynamic. It varies from society to society, and it is subject to change. Gender roles and responsibilities are subject to change from time to time, right? So here, we want to briefly talk about theories of gender development. If you want to talk about the process of gender development, then you should also be in a position to talk about the theories of gender development. So here we are just going to briefly mention some of these theories. So the theories we'll talk about here are the social learning theory, the biological theory, the cognitive development theory, and the gender schema theory. So these are the theories we want to quickly talk about. So first of all, let's talk about the social learning theory. And the social learning theory is largely informed by the work of a scholar called Albert Bandura. So Bandura, according to Bandura, behavior is learned through observation, through modeling, through reinforcement, and through punishment. So basically, that is what the social learning theory is about. According to Bandura, behavior in society is learned through observation, through modeling, through reinforcement, and through punishment. So what it means is that human beings learn behavior in society by observing. So when you observe others do something, then you tend to learn that particular behavior. So for example, children watching television and seeing some people holding guns and shooting other people. So as children, when they are alone, they want to practice it. So he may take a stick and use a stick as a gun, and then he'll point the stick at another individual, trying to say that he's going to shoot. So that behavior is learned through observation, because the children have observed that behavior, they want to practice that behavior. So according to Albert Bandura, behavior is learned through observation. So what it means is that gender behaviors are learned through observation. So because young women or young girls observe their mothers do something, they begin to think that this is reserved for women. In society, it is only women or females who can do this particular thing, because they have observed that repeatedly that particular job or that particular work is done by females in society. And we're also saying that behavior can also be acquired through modeling. So you observe the behavior being done or being exhibited, and you are taking steps to imitate it. That is the modeling. You are taking steps to imitate that behavior. Because as a young girl, your mother has been doing something, you want to repeat it. You come to think that it is something reserved for females or for women in society, and therefore you want to repeat it or imitate. Then behavior is also learned through reinforcement. And here, when we talk about reinforcement, we are trying to talk about the fact that a behavior is likely to be repeated or imitated once it is reinforced. And here, talking about reinforcement, we're talking about maybe rewarding a particular behavior. So let's put it that way. We are trying to reinforce a particular behavior by given some kind of reward, whether material or non-material reward. So for example, if a girl sweeps the compound and the mother claps for her, that is reinforcement. You are trying to reinforce the behavior, what the girl has done. So the next day, even without the mother telling the girl to sweep the compound, the girl comes to know that when I do this kind of thing, then it is appreciated through reinforcement. They clap for me or they promise to buy something for me. So that is the reinforcement we're talking about. Then a particular behavior is adopted or abandoned dependent on the kind of punishment we give to it. So if a girl does something and she is punished, and punishment here takes different forms. Even staring at someone could be a punishment. Staring at someone in a particular way could deter the person from actually repeating a particular behavior. So punishment can deter people away from certain kinds of behaviors. So social learning theory boils down to observation, modeling, reinforcement, and punishment. So if in society, if young girls or young boys want to learn a particular behavior, then they learn it through observation, through modeling, through reinforcement. And if you want to deter them from a particular behavior, you can do that through punishment. Please, any question up to this stage? Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everything, sir.
Is there any question or clarification that we have to make as far as the social learning theory is concerned? If there's no question, let's move to the next one. The biological. Someone wants to say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, with the social learning theory, can we say the reinforcement? Is it the way of maybe encouraging and discouraging a particular behavior that should be different from, or to be maybe motivated to do more when it comes to the reinforcement?
Pardon?
With the social learning theory,
when
we look at the reinforcement.
Okay.
I'm asking whether it can also deal with maybe discouraging or encouraging a particular behavior.
So basically, when we talk about reinforcement, to reinforce means to support. So when we talk about reinforcement, we are talking about trying to support the behavior of a particular person. So if you are trying to reinforce it, you are trying to let the person repeat it. So you do certain things that will let the person know that this behavior is acceptable. And therefore, when you do it, you'll be praised, or you'll be rewarded, or you'll be liked by people in society. That's a reinforcement.
So
there are different ways. I don't know. Are you getting it?
Yes, so that can that one be said to be encouragement or encouraging to do
exactly
more such a behavior?
Okay. Exactly. So when we talk about reinforcement, we're trying to encourage or support people to repeat particular behaviors. And when we talk about punishment, we're using that one to deter people from doing something, or to discourage people from doing something. Right? So
yes, sir. Pleasure.
So for example, if a child should slap you as a daddy, and you stare at the child in a particular way, or you even slap the child back, or give him a knock, or say a particular harsh word, then the child gets to know that it is not good to slap my daddy because you stared at him in a way that was very scaring, or you slap him back and tell him never to do that, or you took a cane and caned him. So with this punishment, the child gets to know that my behavior is a negative behavior. It is not encouraged by society. Society does not value it. Society does not encourage it, and therefore I must not repeat it. So that is the punishment. So whereas reinforcement is supposed to encourage something, a particular behavior in society, punishment is supposed to deter a particular behavior in society. Then we move to the second one, which is the biological, or what some people also call neurophysiological theory, the biological theory. So this is another theory that some people have used to explain gender development. So according to this theory, gender development has a biological determination, or it has a biological basis. In other words, this particular theory is trying to say that development of gender identities has some affinity with sociobiology. In other words, it's a combination of not just, it's made up of not just social things, but also it has more to do with biology. That is why we talk about sociobiology. It's not just about the social aspect, but it is also has to do with the biological aspect. So this particular term, that is sociobiology, was coined by Edward Wilson, who was an entomologist. So sociobiologists believe that all behaviors in society, or all social behaviors, have biological dimension. All social behaviors have biological determination, or they are rooted in biology. In other words, all social behaviors have biological dimension or biological aspect. All right. So what it is trying to say here is that every social action has a biological aspect. Right. So let's give an example here. So if you are born to be very disrespectful, the social biologists will try to argue that you did not completely learn this. This also has a biological aspect. Your disrespect has a biological aspect. It is not wholly about social or cultural, but it also has a biological dimension. So in this regard, the sociobiologists believe that human behavior such as aggression, right, the bond between the mother and the child, even language or incest taboo, has a biological aspect. It can be traced. It has something to do with our genes. So that is the argument of sociobiologists. They are saying that everything is not social or it's not cultural. Things are made up of a combination of sociality and biology, the social aspect and the biological aspect. So for example, if you are aggressive, if there is an aggressive child, a child who is always aggressive towards his peers. So some people will say that maybe the child has learned that behavior, maybe on television or by watching his parents being aggressive. That's the argument of people who come from the social learning theory. That is what they will argue. They will say that, or they will conclude that this particular behavior is learned. So that's what social learning theories will say. Social learning theories will say that you are aggressive because your behavior is learned. You are just imitating what you have observed. But the biological theorist or the social biologists will say that no, and this is not just about learning. It goes beyond learning. It has some biological dimension, right? So if you are aggressive, the biological theories don't link your aggression fully to culture, but they also argue that it has more to do with biology. It is part of your genes. It is part of your biological makeup. So that is the argument of those people who support the biological theory, or those people who are sociobiologists. They always try to say that not everything is social. Some things have biological basis. Any question about the biological theory before we move on? If there's no question, let's move to the
Hello, sir. Good morning,
Hello.
sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, sir.
So, yeah, so my question is, I want to know the biological theory. Can it also be termed? Can it also be looked at the inheritance?
Inheritance.
Yeah.
Yes, so if you look at the biological theory, it has more to do with inheritance, right? Because they are saying that it is part of the genes. So some particular genes were transferred to you, and it is so they associate it not only to culture but also to genes. So it means that it has more to do with inheritance. So people, if you grow up to be aggressive, some people will say that, okay, I'm not surprised. If you actually know his father, you will not be surprised why he's aggressive. The father is even more aggressive. Sometimes we hear these comments. Or if he's very temperamental, then people will say that, oh, do you know the mother? In fact, if you get to know the mother, you will not be surprised why this girl is behaving the way she is doing. So it has more to do with biology. It has more to do with transfer of genes. All right. So these are the arguments the biological theories will put up. So you are behaving this way, not because you have learned it in society through cultural transmission, but it is also about biology. I hope that is clear enough.
Yes, sir.
So
Sir,
we move
please,
to the
can,
next.
can
Okay,
one
someone wants to
inherit?
say something.
Yes, sir. Sir, can one
Okay,
inherit
please go ahead.
womanizing from the parent?
Womanizing.
Yes, sir.
So that
Like my
one,
brother Samson.
that one, I'll throw it to the class. Do you think that if they describe someone as a womanizer, do you think the person learned it from society, or it is biologically determined? What would be your view on this as a class?
Okay.
If they say,
Ope and
oh,
Samson, please come
if
and
they
tell us your
say
experience.
this man, when it comes to womanizing, he's number one. You can't match him when it comes to womanizing. When they describe someone like that, do you think the person is a womanizer because of culture, because he has picked it up in society, or it's because of biological determination? So please go ahead with your answer.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello. Please, I would say it's social biology.
Okay, so you
Please, do you hear me?
attribute it to sociobiology.
Yes, please. Because
And why will you say that?
good, at times people observe us from the society and learn, like if you were students and in your group like students, you tend to follow some of your friends who do that behavior or put out that behavior. So you learn that through the society. And about the times you hear somebody say, hey, the father was a very womanizer man, and that has made the boy also to inherit it from the father. So here it comes into the making way. In that society can appreciate us as well as the management can go back to the family who is the family that like that. And when you check the analysis of some of the guys in the family were doing, it's attributed to that. So I would say social biology. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your answer. Does anyone support or disagree with what our brother has said? Who was okay? Asedu, I can see your hand is up. Asedu, can you unmute yourself and talk? You are muted.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, sir. Yeah, I support
Okay.
what my brother said because it could be social, it could be biological. In our society, like he explained earlier, somebody may be associated with some friends, they may engage in humanizing, and then it will have influence on the person. On the cultural aspect too, we have some societies, you need to marry more. Like, for instance, our brother Muslims, you can marry as many as 4. So that one will also attribute to that. And then we come to the biologically. During the olden days, our fathers may marry about 10 or 4. So this will also enhance the children who are, I don't want to use the word stubborn or something like that, but it can also have influence on their children for them to also marry about maybe 3 or 4 or be a humanizer. Thank you, sir.
So if we are saying that you can inherit the behavior of womanizing from, then how come we don't inherit many of these things? So for example, your father was a very able person. He was very powerful when it comes to reproduction. Your father had 30 children, but you are there, you are not able to even produce one child. You are not fertile. So how do we explain that one? If we think that womanizing can be transferred biologically, so why not the ability to produce too?
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Charles.
Yes, sir. In relation to what you're just saying, it's minute of the whole discussion because yes, quite a few people will face such a challenge from a parent or a father who was into that. But mostly parents who are womanizers or who marry more than one or so, if you can just check in their family or genealogy, you can just know that these things normally happen. It continues, basically. So in relation to what you are just talking about, maybe a son not being able to produce or give birth or something, it's minute. It happens, but it's not often. But the majority of whatever happens in relation to the humanizing is something broad. So that's what I would just say. So what are this? Okay, so I'm listening, sir.
So in effect, are you making the point that, are you supporting the point that womanizing is has a biological basis?
Yes, it has a biological basis because you can check through the families of men who are more or less into womanizing. They usually have one or two wives or concubines attached to their wives, and it goes on to some of their children. And it's in most of our, communities or vicinities that we live in. So it's something that is there, but it's not only attributed to that. Society, peer pressure can influence people to involve in womanizing. Maybe I don't like it, but friends are doing it. They come, they talk about it. Okay, you want to try, and it ends up becoming a part of the person. It might not have been, it might not have been inherited. It might not have been inherited, but peer pressure can influence. And the society too can influence. Everybody sees that, one person has about 2-3 wives, have kids here and there. They also would love to just try those kind of things. So in that aspect, it's not bound only on genetics or biology. It's bound by different factors. So this is what I can just contribute to. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So from the beginning, I told you that in the social sciences, is someone talking?
Yes. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please, I'm called Mark Adombia.
Okay.
Guess what my brother have said. I think is the same, but we are individual difference. Even the twins, we don't think the same thing. We don't reason the same thing. But I think when your parents marry more than 2 or 1, it's due to the children. Some will practice that, but some may not practice that. So I would say that it's due to the what? Some is a practice. They may also influence, they think that maybe that's a good way. So some children will practice that, but it's not, they doesn't inherit, but it's a practice. So thank you, sir.
So if I understand you, you are trying to say that if, for example, your father was...
Hello, sir.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So you were trying to say that...
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please, who is trying to talk?
Hello.
Guys,
Hello, sir.
Yes.
This is
say
Richard, sir.
answers it, and then you come in so that we can just get in tune. If not,
Sir,
we might not get whatever we are just talking about.
So let me quickly comment on what he said. So he was saying that sometimes polygyny, or a man marry more than one wife, people are saying it is inherited, but the inheritance may not be through genes, right? The inheritance could just be socially. We can also have social inheritance, where because you observe your father and your father did something, you also want to do it because your father did it. So that is social observation. So that's social inheritance. It's not that biologically, because your father did it biologically, that's why you are doing it. But you observe that your father did it and you want to. So it means that this one is more cultural than biology. I don't know if you are getting what I'm trying to say.
Yes, that is it exactly.
So you notice that your father did it. So for example, my father had 4 wives, and I have one right now. But people are asking me, will you marry more women? If I say yes, I will marry. Maybe I'm just trying to behave like my father. It's not because he transferred some genes to me that makes me want to marry more, but it's because I thought my father married more women because he was a Muslim, and I want to do the same. So this is just about society. It's about cultural construction or cultural influence, not biological determination.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if you got what I tried to explain.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Understood,
Well
sir.
understood, but I'm a little bit confused here from my colleague's explanation. Like marrying too many wives. So marrying too many wives, I seen it not to be a womanizing. It's a cultural practice. Like a Muslim, your religion permitted you to marry up to wife if you are up to 4 if you are able. Some people marry one wife, but they have multiple girlfriends. So I will explain womanizing to be someone who is addicted to women, whether being you marrying them 4, 5, 10, or marrying a single wife, but having multiple intercourse with several women. Thank you.
Okay, so sometimes I get confused. What exactly do we refer to as womanizing? Is it having more women, having access, maybe sexual access to more women, or a particular? Because, for example, if you look at those who marry more than one, you may marry 3 or 4, but maybe your intention of marrying is not about sex, right? You have different reasons for marrying the other. Maybe your first one, you wanted to bring her, have sex with her, and produce children. Maybe the subsequent marriages, the subsequent women you brought, maybe you had different reasons for bringing them, right? So it could be that the second one you brought was exceptionally rich, and you wanted to leverage on the riches. You wanted to benefit from that. That's why you brought her. Maybe the third one you went and brought, let's say your brother died and left her, and you don't want her to suffer with the children. Some cultures permit that when your brother dies, you can actually marry the brother's wife and look after the children. So maybe out of sympathy, you didn't want the woman to suffer, or because your culture, it is accepted, and maybe the elders in your family convince you, they try to encourage you to do it, just to make sure the family is together, they are not split, and you take care of. So you may marry for different reasons. So in that case, are you considered a womanizer? That's why I started by saying that, what actually do we mean by womanizing? When we say somebody is a womanizer, what are some of the features or characteristics that will push us to draw a conclusion that a particular person is a womanizer?
So having a wife but having numerous concubines, it's assumed as a womanizing. If in relation to our brother Muslims who probably can marry 4, at least it's socially known to them, everybody that they can marry 4, nobody can fault them. But maybe in the Christian sector, we are assumed we can marry 1. So when you marry and you have different spouses somewhere, in general context, in societal context, it's assumed as you are a womanizer because you can't stick to your wife. So the womanizing is bound out of having people beyond your wife. That is how I think it is. Having 4 wives and probably maybe having other concubines might be deemed as womanizing because your religion allows you to marry 4 and you are in that bracket. So if you go beyond it, you're a womanizer. Christian religion allows maybe 1. If you go beyond it, you are a womanizer. So womanizing is more or less attributed to having wife or wives and then going beyond them for other concubines or spouses. So that's my understanding of
Okay.
it, sir. Thank you.
So if I
sir.
understand you right, when we talk about womanizing, we are trying to say that those who are engaged in socially unacceptable ways of having something with a woman, maybe engaged in socially unacceptable ways in terms of access to sex or something. I think that's the understanding I'm getting. But if it is recognized by what you are doing, is recognized by society, then it is not considered womanizing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There are some traditionalists who can marry only God.
Because in some societies, you find a chief marrying up to 20 women.
Good. It's known in that society or community, so it's accepted. But when it goes beyond what is accepted, then it becomes what is known as the womanizing. But
so in this context, womanizing cannot be biological.
Sir, the biological aspect, as I just said, it's minute, but it's there. It's there because at the end of the day, we have some families
Because
when you go and trace.
we are linking everything to culture.
No, yes, I'm just saying, aside that, the biological aspect is there. You can go to a family tree where you can just realize that, like, they have that thing in their family. It might not be general, but it's proportional. Like, it's at some specific places where, like, it's there. A man can have, the father was having about 20 wives, so many children, or 20 women, so many. You go to the son, he's having the same, the grandson, like, it's there. Genetically, it's there. So it might not be big or huge, but it has an effect. It has an effect when it comes to, how do I call it, womanizing also, but it might not be that big or huge. So that's my thought or my understanding of it, basically.
Okay. So I think let's move on. We'll go to cognitive developmental theory. The cognitive developmental theory. So this is also another theory that tries to help us explain gender development or development in relation to gender. So this particular theory assumes that children's understanding or their appreciation of gender is correlated with their state of cognitive development. And that's why it is called cognitive theory. So children's thinking that, okay, I am responsible for doing farming activities, or I'm responsible for doing this particular activity, is related to their state of cognitive development. So the supporters or the proponents of this particular theory are of the view that at birth, children are completely oblivious to the presence of any gender differences or gender as a social category. But as they grow, they become conscious of this fact. They become conscious of the presence of the differences between men and women and the value or the premium that society has placed on them. So therefore, they develop their gender identities as their cognitive abilities or capabilities developed. So that's the argument here. Children develop consciousness about their gender roles or identities as they begin to develop cognitively, as their cognitive development start to increase. So they develop consciousness about their gender identities as their cognitive abilities or capabilities also develop. And that is when children become gender aware, among many other things. So here we are saying that being aware about your gender identity you begin capacity or ability in terms of your cognitive development that I need to help my mother. So they are arguing that it has more to do with cognitive development than about heaven or biology. So for those who support the cognitive theory or cognitive development theory, they are saying that children begin to develop gender consciousness. They begin to develop consciousness in terms of their gender identity when they attain a certain level of cognitive development, not necessarily by observing, as the social theory tries to suggest, or not about biology, but it's about cognitive development. Are we clear about this theory? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Hello. Yes, sir.
Are we together?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Are we together?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
I can't. So I was just asking if anyone has any question about the cognitive developmental theory. If there's no question, let's move to the next one. The gender schema theory. The gender schema theory. So this is another, or it is one of the theories that help us to explain gender development. So this theory tries to place the child at the active role, at the center of, it tries to place the child at the center of the acquisition of gender identity. So it emphasizes that the child is the center of gender development. It emphasizes the centrality of the act to the process of gender socialization. So this has to do with the kind of activism exhibited by the child. So the child is very active in the socialization process. So, and the fact that the child is able to develop some consciousness about gender identity, your gender consciousness has more to do with the active participation of the child. So that is what the gender schema theory is trying to explain. It emphasizes the critical role or the centrality of the active role that the child plays through the process of gender socialization. So this theory explains that children are active learners and they observe the gender typed behaviors and attitudes or activities that take place in society. and they try to more or less take up this rule through. So in this regard, children usually form this kind of schema built on the gender division of labor that exists in society. They try to be actively engaged based on the kind of rules that they are socialized to adopt, right? So if someone is socialized to take on male rules, so to take on those rules because he's socialized and he actively takes part in that. So the active involvement of the child in these activities or rules become very key. As far as this particular theory is concerned, it talks about active involvement of children in the gender socialization process. So, for example, we are told that children are more likely to remember an engineer as a man and a nurse as a woman, right? An engineer as a man and a nurse as a woman. For example, that was the example I gave earlier. So children are able to develop gender stereotypes at this stage because they are actively, or because of their active involvement in some of these things. So guidance is needed here so that we don't get these kind of thinking perpetuated, or so that children will not perpetuate these kind of stereotypes. They need to be guided. If not, because these things are actively done in the presence of children and they see them, they see that theoretically or pragmatically, engineers are always men and nurses are always females. So they grow up with that kind of developmental thinking. They grow up with that kind of thinking that engineers are always men and nurses are always females or women, because actively that is what they see in their everyday environment. They constantly come across this, and they see this being actively and vigorously pursued in society. So if they are not guided, they will grow up with that kind of thinking that engineers must necessarily be men and that nurses must also necessarily be women or females. Any question about the gender schema theory? Any question?
No questions, sir.
Then we move to section 2. So if there's no question, we are done with section 1. We're coming to of development as a concept. So here what we want to say is that development as a term or as a concept does not have a universally acceptable definition. In other words, there is no one single definition of development that is generally or universally acceptable. In other words, the definition or the meaning of development is very political. the meaning of development is very political. What is accepted to be part of development in one society may not be accepted as part of development in another society. So we are saying that we cannot have one universal meaning for development. We cannot have a single definition of development that is generally acceptable to everyone or that is universally acceptable. And this is because development means different things to different people. Development means different things to different people. So for example, whereas the people of the United States may see a man marrying another woman as part of development, in our Ghanaian context, a man marrying another man is seen as negative development. It's not development. It's not part of our development needs at all. And it's not considered as part of development. It's actually anti-development. So that's why we're saying that development or what we consider as development is not generally accepted everywhere. The meaning of development is very political, is very context specific to society. But we all agree that development must be all encompassing. It means that development must include almost everything. It is all encompassing, or it must be all encompassing. In other words, when we say it must be all encompassing, what we are trying to say is that development is a multi-dimensional concept. It brings many things into its fold. It's a multi-dimensional concept. In other words, development has many dimensions. It has social dimension, it has economic dimension, it has political dimension, it has cultural dimension, right? So what we call development is not a simple concept. It is a very complex concept that is subject to contestation. The meaning of development is not the same everywhere. It varies from society to society. So like I said, we have economic development and we have social development. So economic and social development should be included in the development agenda of every society. When we talk about development, then we immediately bring into focus certain concepts. When we talk about development, we're talking about modernization. When we talk about development, we're talking about equity or equality. When we talk about development, we're talking about freedom. When we talk about development, what also comes to mind is liberty or progress or human welfare or access to all the fundamental or necessary things that we need for existence. So development can be understood as the process of expanding the capabilities of people. Hello?
Sorry, you're with you.
Please just give me some few seconds.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, you went off.
Yeah. So we're trying to say that it is not so simple to define development, because development means different things to different people. And we gave an example. Whereas in the United States, gay marriage or lesbian marriage is encouraged and it is seen to be part of development. In our Ghanaian context, lesbian or gay marriage is discouraged. And when you do it in Ghana, we consider your action as anti-development, or a behavior or an act that does not promote our development. So to that extent, we say that development means different things to different people in different societies. And we also made the point that development must be all-encompassing. And when we say it must be all-encompassing, it must include the several dimensions. It is multidimensional. It has several dimensions, and development must try to include all these dimensions. So we said development has economic dimension, it has social dimension, it has political dimension, it has cultural dimension, it has ethical dimension. In fact, the dimensions are many. And we're saying that development, when we talk about real development, it must try to bring all these dimensions together. And we said the term development, when we talk about development, it immediately brings to mind certain concepts. So for example, when we talk about development, it brings to mind concepts such as modernization, equality, equity, freedoms, liberties, progress, human welfare, and access to vital resources. So we can simply conceptualize development as the process of expanding the capabilities of people. So several years ago, this understanding of development was given by an economist called Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen. So for Amartya Sen, he published a book in 1999, and the book is called, or the book is titled, Development as Freedom. That's the title of the book. So Amartya Sen conceptualizes development as a process of increasing the actual freedoms that people enjoy. So in defining development, he says that if you define development and you leave out the idea of freedom, then your definition of development is not complete, it's not comprehensive. So he conceptualizes development as a process of increasing the actual freedoms that people enjoy. So his definition emphasizes human freedoms as opposed to the limited conceptions of development. Sometimes we narrowly limits development to economic progress or material progress or cultural progress or social progress. But he's saying that if you are progressing economically or materially or even culturally, if you are making progress in terms of your cultural forward march, then development is not complete until people have freedoms, until people have freedom to make their own choices. So that's why he conceptualizes development as the process of increasing the actual freedoms that people enjoy. So if you look at the the meaning of development from the sense perspective, Amartya Sen's perspective, so he's saying that you can have all the factories in Ghana, you can have all the manufacturing, all the big manufacturing companies, you can have all the big equipment for manufacturing, all the buildings in Ghana can be high-rise buildings, can be story buildings, right? You can have all the material possessions and all that. But if people don't enjoy freedom, then there is no development. That's exactly what he's trying to say, right? People in Ghana can be living on the $100 per day or even $200 per day, but that means nothing if people do not enjoy freedom. So that's why he has conceptualized development to include increasing the actual freedoms that people enjoy. So he does not limit the development to material possession or cultural development, which associate development with factors like expansion of gross national product, the increase in personal income of people, industrialization, technological advancement, or social modernization. When you have all these things that we have mentioned without guaranteeing the freedom of the people, then according to Amartya Sen, you have not achieved development. So development must not only or must not be narrowly limited to gross national product or GDP. It must not be limited to personal incomes. It must not be limited to industrialization, building more factories and producing more industrial products. It must also not be limited to technological advancement or social modernization, but it must include the ability to enjoy freedom. According to PRA 2001, development is the improvement of the quality of life of people. Development is explained as the improvement of the quality of life of people and the ability to manage the lives of people within these reasonable accomplishment and dignity. So he has also included some dimensions to development, dignity. So it's not about people attaining their potential in terms of material possessions or all that. It also includes the ability of people to develop self-confidence or to acquire self-confidence and to manage their lives in dignity. So for development to exist, people must have all the material possessions, people must have the freedom, people must have the chance or the ability to acquire self-confidence, and they must also live in dignity. If the people have everything and they are not living in dignity, then development is not yet achieved. So it tells you that development is not just about economic progress. It goes far beyond that. According to Slim, 1995, according to Slim, development refers to a change that brings about improvement, a change that brings about improvement or that makes the lives of people better. So if you cannot initiate any change that will improve the lives of people or that will not make the lives of people better, then according to Slim, you have not brought about any development. So basically, development has to do with changes that lead to a definite improvement in the living conditions of people. Anything that you do that will lead to the improvement of the living conditions, of people. So in order to achieve development, you must have economic progress, you must have freedom at your disposal, you must have the ability to, or you must have that, there must be that opportunity to be self-confident, to attain or to acquire self-confidence. There must be that opportunity to live in dignity. So making things better for human life or taking steps to improve the living conditions of human beings or making life better. So basically, development simply means making life better. And making life better means a lot. It goes beyond economic betterment. It includes many other dimensions. Like we said previously, development is a multi-dimensional concept. It means that development has multiple dimensions. It has several dimensions. And if you are just trying to achieve one of these dimensions, then you are not achieving development. To say you have achieved development, you must approach it from that multi-dimensional aspect. You must approach it in a multi-dimensional manner. You must try to pay attention to all the dimensions that we have talked about: economic dimension, social dimension, cultural dimension, the ethical dimension. So the fact that people must have the chance to live in dignity. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So sometimes we also say that in order to have meaningful development, that development must not just be limited to one generation. That kind of development you talk about should be passed on from one generation to another. When we have that kind of development that is passed on from generation to the next, then we talk about sustainable development. Then if we have a particular kind of development that is only limited to the current generation without having in mind future generation, or without taking into consideration the needs and aspirations of future generation, then we are not talking about sustainable development. So in order to talk about sustainable development, you should be talking about the current development that also includes the aspirations and needs of future generations. So in development, we always talk about sustainable development. We are not just talking about development, but sustainable development. So what are some of the different types of development that we have? What are the types of development that we have? We can talk about different types of development. So here I want to talk about two main types of development. These are social development and economic development. So these are the two types of development that we'll talk about here: social development, economic development. So what is social development? What is social development? So when we talk about social development, it refers to that kind of development that goes beyond material or economic development. When we talk about social development, it is that kind of development that goes beyond variables such as gross national product or gross domestic product. It goes beyond macroeconomic stability, right? When we talk about social development goes beyond macroeconomic indicators. Social development is defined as the non-economic processes and results of development. So the non-economic aspect of development is what we refer to as social development. So let's look at the economic and non-economic aspects of development. So when we talk about economic aspects of development, we are talking about GDP, we are talking about per capita income, we are talking about industrialization, putting up giant factories or industries. We are employing people, many more industrial products, increasing your GDP or gross domestic product. All these are part of economic development. Recruiting more teachers or recruiting more health professionals, right? Recruiting more security personnel. All these are the economic aspect of development. But we also have the non-economic aspect of development. Can someone mention the non-economic aspect of development? Examples of non-economic aspect of development. Hello.
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir,
Can you
please,
hear
we can
me?
hear you. Yes, sir.
So I was saying that so can someone give us hello?
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
Can someone tell
You
us
can
the
hear?
non-economic aspect of, we have given examples of the economic dimension of development. Can someone tell us the non-economic aspect?
So can we talk of good water and healthcare?
Good water
Yes, sir, and healthcare.
Healthcare. So healthcare, we are talking about hospitals and other health infrastructure, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So those are economic dimension of development.
Hello,
Those are
sir.
classified as economic aspect of development. I'm looking for examples that have to do with non-economic aspect of development.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I would say a good interpersonal relationship.
Good interpersonal. Can you give an example?
When there's no war and there's peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's non-economic. Okay. So apart from that one, can we talk about any other?
Sir, my name is Aken Ferguson.
Okay.
Anthony. So we can talk about personal activities. That is done for love, hobby, or personal happiness. Example like cooking for your family or something like that.
That's also economic aspect.
Okay.
So in terms of the non-economic aspect of development, you can talk about vulnerability. You can talk about security. You know, security is a vital component of development, right? You agree with me that security is a vital component of development. There are some societies, they have all the good things they want. They have the beautiful hospitals. They have the beautiful hospitals. They have their GDP level is very high. They have excellent educational institutions. They have almost everything, but there is no security in that society. People are not sure whether they can live beyond the next 1 hour. All the time, people are in arms, killing each other. So in that kind of society, even though they have everything they need, but there is no security, and therefore we don't have development there. So these are non-economic dimensions or aspects of development. Vulnerability, the issue of security, the issue of freedom, right? So our country is developed, but people don't have access to free speech, right? You don't have that freedom to do what you want or to say what you want. People live in fear. So when that is the case, then we can say we have achieved holistic or meaningful development. So for development to be complete, you must have the presence of both economic and non-economic dimensions. So for example, inequality is a non-economic component of development. If you have a society that a wealthy society, but much of the wealth is concentrated in the hands of the very few. Maybe they say a particular society is well developed, but when you go to that society, about 90%, of their resources are found in the hands of very few people. So like I was saying, You can have a society that is very wealthy or a very rich society. In that society is concentrated in the hands of just a few people. So even though it's a very developed society, but only 5% of the population are controlling the resources. So in that case, there is so much inequality in that society. And inequality is a non-economic aspect or non-economic dimension of development. So when you talk about the non-economic dimension of development, you can talk about vulnerability, you can talk about inclusion or exclusion, you can talk about well-being, you can talk about responsibility, you can talk about dignity, you can talk about freedom. People's ability to enjoy formal or informal rights, right? People are okay with everything, but their rights have been trampled upon. So these are the non-economic aspect of development. So social justice refers to the idea of building an equal society organization that values and recognizes human rights based on equity and solidarity. So in Ghana, for example, social development is the core of our national development. We do many social interventions. In the long term, our country seeks to create an equitable, healthy, and prosperous society that ensures that every citizen in this country lives in a decent, fulfilling, and more dignified society. Any question? So we have looked at economic development, social development. Then we also have economic development. Remember I told you we have two aspects of development, economic development and social development. So we have talked about the social development. Now, economic development is considered to be any form of development that leads to the structural transformation of an economy, right? So structural transformation of the economy. So employing more people, building more factories, bringing in more equipment to drive the industrialization agenda, right? Increasing the hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, I think our time is up. Sir, please, I think our time is up.
What's our time? Is it 1 hour or 1 hour 30 minutes?
Sir, it's 2 hours.
It's 2 hours?
Yes, sir. We were supposed to start from 7 o'clock to 9
8
o'clock.
o'clock.
So
9
we have
o'clock,
30
right?
minutes. 7 to 9.
So we have spent extra time.
Yes, sir. So we are to go for 30 minutes.
Okay,
We can
so
prepare for the next lecture.
you have other lectures. So I don't want to go beyond this time because you have other lectures. So let's stop here and then hopefully we'll continue next week or tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow, sir.
Sir, you will be
Tomorrow.
meeting tomorrow.
We are continuing tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so see you tomorrow. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you, sir.
It's a same to you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Same to
Bye.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Guys,